Microphone's not working.
There we go. Perfect. All right. I will call the June 27th, 2022 meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. I will announce that the board did meet in executive session. We discussed 2 legal matters and 1 personnel matter. We will now do the roll call. Mr. Neese.
Mr. Altieri.
Here.
Ms. Roberts Lightcap.
Here.
Mr. Partridge.
Here.
Mr. Russo.
Here.
Ms. Chanlis. Your solicitor, engineer, and manager are here.
Perfect. We will now move down to the moment of silence. I ask that we all remember the individuals. There was a train derailment today in Missouri. It was an Amtrak train derailment. And so that was the first thing that came to my mind. So let's remember them and everybody else who's traveling this holiday weekend. And we have a safe and enjoyable Independence Day. We'll stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Item number 5, the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We'll now move down to section 6, public comment for agenda items only. Any members of the audience who have any public comment on an agenda item, please go to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, just Louis Rosenthal, 20 Harrison Drive. Just clarification. During the presentations, will there be an opportunity for the public to comment? If not, I'm prepared to offer comments on.
Now,
the
I would
present-
recommend, Louis, the way that I'm going to handle it for this moving forward, because it's a great question, is whenever we have those presentations, because you don't know what they're going to present, just to give you the opportunity to ask a question after that. Any other any other public comment? I will also make note that we did not receive any public comment in the Dropbox or in the public comment email address. So now we move down to section 7, minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the June 13th, 2022 meeting?
So moved.
Motion was made by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap, seconded by Supervisor Chanlis. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Section 8, presentations. 8.1, the 2021 audit presentation by Mr. Chris Herr.
Hi there. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Perfect. The hard part's over then. Happy to be here tonight to present the 2021 financial statement results. I did present the finance department with a little 5-page summary of the audit that I'm going to go over really quickly. First page of that, very simply, the results of our audit. The auditor's report on the financial statement is an unmodified opinion. Also known as a clean opinion. It's the best opinion you can have on your financial. It's what you want to have there. What that means is that in our opinion, the statements are free of any material misstatement. They comply with generally accepted accounting principles and any governmental accounting standard board pronouncements. And there was no scope limitations. We come into the audit with a very long, lengthy list of everything we want to see for the audit, everything from bank statements and reconciliations to W-2s for every employee to individual invoices. And we got everything that we needed to fully conduct our audit. Non-compliance, no instances of non-compliance were noted during the financial statement, and findings, no findings. If we had noted anything during our audit, anything at the township from a financial point of view not working right, we would be issuing a separate letter, a management letter to kind of go over those things, and there was nothing. We thought the internal controls, processes, procedures of the township were working really well. So no issues there for this year. Second page is just some of the estimates that are in your financial statement, which are also some of the more interesting numbers in there when it comes to the pension plan. So your net pension liability for the police pension plan, it was $3 million overfunded for 2021. That means the assets in the plan exceed the actuarially calculated liability. So assets exceeded the liability by $3 million. It's about $1.1 million more overfunded than 2020. So 2020 was about $2 million. Position improved by about $1 million for the police pension plan. The non-uniform pension plan also overfunded. It was overfunded about $650,000 last year, came down to about $560 this year. So that decreased a little bit, still overfunded, decreased a little bit. The actuaries did update some mortality tables and things like that, which they do every few years. So that did result in a little bit of a loss, but still both pension plans performing really well. The minimum municipal obligation for pensions, this is what you're required to put into your pension plans each year. Up a little bit in the police plan, $560,000 this year versus $530,000 last year. And the non-uniform plan, right between $150,000, $160,000 a year. The net OPEB liability, this is other post-employment benefits. So this is post-employment benefits other than pensions, this be medical insurance, things like that. Your liability there at the end of 2020 was $4.8 million, actually dropped down to about $3.5 million in 2021. So a little bit of improvement there. I would expect that to continue to increase in future years. There was some changes in benefit terms in the most recent actuarial evaluation, which caused that drop. But generally, we tend to see the OPEB liabilities increase year on year. Also important to remember that you guys, unlike the pension plans, there's no requirement to have funds set aside for OPEB. So you do not have any funds set aside for OPEB. You guys kind of pay that as you go, which is why we see that higher liability. Capital assets, total cost of the township's assets at the end of the year, about $44 million. You had about $1.5 million in depreciation for the year, and accumulated depreciation was about $16 million. So the one ratio I always like to do is accumulated depreciation divided by the cost. It's about 37%. So you're about 37% of the way through the life of your assets, which is pretty good for a municipality. I feel like I oftentimes see 50, 60, 70%. So you have a lot of life left in the township assets. The next couple tables are just talking about some of the bigger revenues and expenses of the township, 21 compared to 22. So this first table is your revenues. Total governmental revenues were about $12.2 million for 2021. That was down from about $13 million in 2020. So about $800,000 less revenue in 2021 compared to 2020. So what happened? Taxes, the blue line, that bottom line is your 2021 numbers. We had a big increase in taxes, went from about $7.5 million in 2020 to about $8.5 in 2021. About $1 million increase, $900,000 of that was transfer taxes. Real estate market was definitely doing the municipalities big favors in 2021. Licenses and permits, that second section there, relatively stable, was about $2.2 million in 2020 and $1.8 million in 2021. So a little bit of a dip, but nothing significant there. The big drop is in that last column, contributions. Contribution revenue was $1.7 million in 2020, dropped to about $100,000 in 2021. The reason for that drop was back in 2020, the township had a one-time contribution to capital projects from the municipal authority for road restoration work. That was obviously one time. We had it in 2020, didn't have that in 2021. So we have about a $1.6 million decrease in contributions, offset largely by the increase in transfer taxes. But it did net out to about that $800,000 drop overall in revenues from 2021. The next table is your expenditure composition. Again, some big swings here. 2021 governmental expenses about 12.6 million. It was about 14.6 last year, so about a $2 million decrease in expenses. Highways and streets was the big expense in 2020, was about $6 million, dropped to about $2 million this year. The 2020 road program was massive compared to 2021, and that's a part of the reason, that's really all the reason for that big decrease. Also worth mentioning, about $2 million of that 2020 money goes back to that contribution that we saw in the prior table. That contribution from the municipal authority was reimbursing about $1.8 million of the 2020 expense we see here. Public safety, about $5 million in 2020, increased to about $6.3 million in 2021. You know, there's always some increases in police salaries, benefits, those sort of things. Those are a big driver. In 2021, you also had expense for a new fire truck. It was about $1.1 million in 2021. Now, you guys did pay for that in 2020, but it was not recognized as expense until 2021, which is why we see that increase there. And then general government administrative operations, pretty stable, about $1.2 million a year. On the next page, bonds, notes payable, $14.2 million in 2020. You guys did pay down about $1.2 million in principal for the 2021 year. The other thing that happened, I did want to point out there was a refinancing. You guys did issue a 2021 bond for $8.8 million to refund $8.9 million that was left in the 2016 bond. Massive future interest savings there. When I ran the calculations, looks like you guys are going to save about $1.9 million in interest costs by doing that refinancing. The last table we have here is fund balance. So this is for your funds. This is if you took all your assets and paid all your liabilities, what would be left over. That top line, that orange line, that's your other governmental funds. It's everything except for the general fund. So it's capital projects, your liquid fuels, highway aid money's in there. Really stable from 2020 to 2021. It was about $10 million flat year on year, so no real movement there. The blue line, the general fund, we do see that kind of going down a little bit. It was $6 million at the end of 2019. It dropped to about $5.8 million last year, and it dropped down to about $5.3 million this year. So it is decreasing a little bit. I'm not too concerned about it. It's still a really strong fund balance overall. When I look at fund balance in the general fund of $5.3 million, it's about 50% of your annual expenses, which is really good. That means you guys have plenty of funds there for future needs. I typically don't start waving a flag to my clients till they start getting down to like that 2-month line. That's when I start to get really concerned. But right now, you guys have about 6 months worth of fund balance, which is really good, a solid number. Last page, I always like to put something in here just kind of about some of the procedures we do as auditors. We do rely a lot on electronic auditing tools. We use data analytics. One of the things we do is we get the general ledger from the business office. That is a book of every individual transaction that the township has for the year, revenues, expenses, cash, payables, absolutely everything. We put it into our software, which allows us to kind of sort and manipulate the data and test it in different ways. One of the things we do here is a Benford table. Some of you might have seen this before. Basically, Benford's law says in any randomly occurring population of numbers, the first digit will be number 1 about 30% of the time. The number 2 will be the first digit, I think about 22% of the time. That drops all the way down to the number 9, which will be your first digit about 5% of the time. That curve, I've never seen a government, a school district, a county, anybody where when I just look at that first digit, it's not like a perfect curve. So what we actually do is we start to look at the first 2 digits, 1 1, 1 2, 1 3, 1 4. which is where we come up with this schedule. This is actually all of the township's 2021 data in a graph form, and we'll take something like this and use this to conduct some of our expense audit procedures. And you can see some of those lines that are orange, which is the software saying, hey, there's something abnormal happening here. Something is not following this mathematical law. And then we'll dive into each of those numbers and see what's happening. Number 19, recurring insurance charges through payroll. So when we dove into that, we saw the same, I think it was $19 and change every time a payroll run was done. 38, same thing, it was recurring payroll charges. 45, your electrical permit inspection expenses are $45 each, and so on. So that's one of the things we do, just to make sure that we're not looking simply at the same vendors every year or the same expense accounts every year. We're really trying to let the data point us towards places where there might be a problem and then investigate those things. And at the bottom of that page, I do list out some of the other things we do. We do pivot table and analytics, where we'll lay out your data month to month and compare it year to year to look for any abnormal increases, decreases in activity. We'll look at predictive analytics before we even get your information for the year. We've been your auditor for a few years now, so we do have a history. So we'll look at the past 2-3 years of activity, come up with a prediction of what we think this year will look like, and then compare that to the actual results. And again, investigate anything that's off the mark from where we thought things were going to be. W-2s, we look at your W-2s for every employee, make inquiries as to why certain wages might have gone up or down significantly. We look at journal entries that are made throughout the year. We look at your vendors to make sure all your vendors make sense, things like that. So again, just kind of wanted to pull the curtain back a little bit and show a little bit about what we're doing in the background. So that's really all I had from an audit perspective. I'd be happy to field any questions if there are any.
Any members of the board have any questions? All right, do any members of the public have any questions? Mr. Herr, I appreciate you reiterating the fact that we are on a sound financial footing here in Newtown Township, thanks to the employees that we have here, Mr. Lafiata and Mr. Neese. I think that when most people think of audit presentations, they don't find them too exciting, but when you have a result such as the one that we have, it brings excitement to everyone from this board to the township. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's not the most exciting thing, but definitely good results, and certainly appreciate the business office and all the help they do to help us get this audit done.
Thank you very much. All right, we will now move down to 8.2, the EAC Sustainable Newtown Square Business Program presentation by Dane Shoemaker and Bruce Killen. Shoemaker. Sorry about that.
Good evening. I'm Bruce Killen from 37 Dunmany Road. I'm the chair of the EAC, the Environmental Advisory Council. Our charter is to make recommendations about preserving and protecting the resources in the township. And part of that is community outreach. We try to engage with residents of the community. We make suggestions to the township. And also, tonight's presentation has to deal with making recommendations to the business community. Dane came up with the idea, we kind of shook things out about the program that would incent local businesses to take action or just be cognizant of the impact they have on the environment as a result of their business activity. So I'll pass that over to Dane now.
Sure. Thank you. Do you mind zooming out a little bit on the presentation? But thanks for having us. Yeah, I don't know if you can make it smaller or. Oh, you want to make it small? Yeah. There you go. Okay. So thanks. Appreciate you having us. So Dane Shoemaker, I'm with the EAC. I'm at 407 Timber Lane. Been a resident of Newtown Square about 3 years. I've been volunteering with the EAC for about a year. So appreciate it, learning a lot about government, and love volunteering for the township. So what we're proposing tonight is it's a 100% volunteer program for local businesses to basically recognize and reward those businesses that are either already doing things in their business day to day that is in a sustainable manner. This isn't a plastic bag ban. I'll put that out there right now, but that could be one element, right? If there's organizations that want to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to be a good steward of the community. I want to give back. I want to protect the environment. There's a lot of benefits to that. On the next slide, I'll point to the fact that this is an extension of a program that you have already supported, and we really appreciate that. So the Sustainable Pennsylvania, which is a partnership, the statewide program that we adopted last year through a resolution, right? This is really an extension of that. So one of the many dozens of line items that Newtown Square is working towards is outreach to the business community through a rewards program and a recognition program. So there was a resolution passed last April, and as of April this year, so over the course of a year, the township went through a process looking at its operations, and we were awarded the Silver Award, right? So that's level 3, essentially out of 5 levels that the township has been working towards. And so what we're proposing tonight is a program to help us get to the next level, right? And we need the help of local businesses to get there, right? So the goal of this, so what we're calling, so Sustainable Newtown Square was adopted by the township. We're calling this the Green Business Program. Again, this is a way to promote environmentalism within the business community. So the goal is to educate businesses on sustainable practices, reward and recognize those businesses that have already taken steps, aggregate best practices, share that amongst local businesses, and encourage residents to buy local as well. So, and consume responsibly. So there's kind of three benefactors from this program. So, a bit from a business standpoint, if I'm a local business owner, what we're doing is taking the businesses that raise their hand and make a pledge towards environmental practices. We'll combine all those into a directory on the website. Here's a directory of businesses that have adopted either the pledge or certain criteria. They'll get a window decal. They'll get recognition in township communications. This also might help their bottom line, whether they're using LED lighting or reducing water consumption, things like that. It might attract new customers, retain existing customers, right? From a township standpoint, we're building out infrastructure for the local economy to, basically open up a dialogue about sustainable practices. It's going to satisfy some criteria that we need to get to in order to get to that gold and platinum level as a township. It establishes as a progressive community, but we're not hindering free market, right? Now, we're not telling businesses what to do, right? There's a trend right now where, we're banning plastic bags, we're doing all this and that. A lot of communities are adopting that. I think the township, wants to promote small businesses in a way that's not, kind of telling them what to do. From a resident standpoint, we have basically a buy local directory. These are the businesses that are maybe we might want to patronize, right? Because they are doing things that are a little bit more sustainable than others. Consumers may even be willing to pay more for products that are local, right? And they feel good about buying those products. So the general criteria, we're not building out a certification or real concrete requirements. I don't think we have the bandwidth or the qualifications to say what is and what is not sustainable, right? Like, we're not going in and auditing them per se, but what we're asking businesses to do to actually make a pledge, right? And what this would look like is a landing page on the website. The business can go in, they can put their pledge in there. They're going to make every effort to reduce plastic use. If I'm a retail establishment, that might mean eliminating single-use plastic bags and encouraging customers to use reusable bags, right? Or one of the big things is getting businesses to volunteer. We do a lot of park cleanups, right? So we ask each business that makes this pledge, come out once a year, maybe once or twice a year, to help clean up streams, help clean up the parks, get involved with what our residents are doing. make every effort to recycle, eliminate unnecessary vehicle idling, reducing electric usage, whether that's through LED lighting or automated lighting setups, landscaping using native plants and trees, reducing water consumption, and then communicating those efforts to their patrons and customers. Again, this is a volunteer, program. We're not asking businesses, they have a lot on their plate. And really just, it's a dialogue, right? We're coming in, we're asking them to maybe look at one thing that they can improve upon, right? And then we're gonna do an award once a year. So yeah, on the next slide here, so how it would work, again, they'd go to the website, they submit a request, hey, we're gonna do one or two things that might inspire a conversation, whether it's in person, phone call, maybe we catch them at an event. They receive the decal, the media kit, and then each year, what we'd like to do is have them say, hey, this is what we committed to, this is what we achieved, and then each year we just make baby steps. And what we're asking of the Board of Supervisors, asking for your support, asking for your input, any feedback, and whether this might include a resolution if that's needed. And then from there, I believe we have the budget for a pamphlet, educational materials, decals, things like that. So I'm going to open it up then to any questions or feedback.
Be a little more specific about what we help you guys can do.
Close to that podium.
The big task for us will be to reach out to these individual businesses, and all these guys are busy, and getting connected with the decision maker in the business who can say, yes, we want to participate in that program. You guys probably have a better chance of reaching that person than we do. It's not to say that we're not going to do all the work, but anything that you can do to talk up the program will enhance our effort. In terms of, we talked about expenditures that are necessary. I did some research. We're talking about three things. One, a window decal. I'll say, 200 of those probably for $400. We're also asking to spend some money from our budget for a takeaway, an 8.5 by 11 flyer that will explain the program and leave or mailed to the business. And the third element of possible cost would be the cost of postage in some cases to send them a letter signed by you guys, just complimenting them on participation in the program.
Got it. Do you want to add anything? I thought you were about to say something. Okay. Bruce, and Dane, I thank you all I think this is a great presentation. And I think this is an exciting opportunity for the township to continue to move forward in the environmentalist actions, or the environmental actions that we've been taking over the last, I can say, 3 years, since it's the only time that I've been on this board. I think that whatever support you need from this board, I think it's fair to say that we'll be willing to help you out with that. I don't think that there's been a stronger board that has supported, all of these initiatives from the EAC. And Dane kind of touched on some of the ones that we've partnered with the EAC on, and then others that we've kind of branched out ourselves, understanding the importance of the environment here in Newtown Township, the municipal audit through the PA Environmental Council, where we're going through all of our ordinances and looking at all of them, the sustainable PA, where we just received that silver certification, the native plant resolution that we adopted a few years ago, encouraging the planting of native species on private and public land, our involvement in Birdtown, thanks to Janet Gravanis, and then also with your helps, the adoption of the shade tree ordinance and the Shade Tree Commission, which is now up and running. So I think it unequivocally said that this board, as I said, in the last 3 years, has done all that we can with regards to environmental initiatives, and look forward to doing more. And I think that this is just another step in the right direction of ensuring that. So I have no questions. Utilize me how you need me. I don't know if any of the other board members have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This board has volunteered and have gone, with all of you on these cleanups and on these hikes, which all of you have been great to put together. And I think this is the next step. So you get the businesses involved, maybe get them to help support a cleanup at the park, where they can, I don't know, give donuts or something.
Sure.
But if it's a local business, they can help support that kind of a thing. And along with Leonard, I'm sure that we all agree that we're here to help move this thing forward. And it helps our businesses as well. I see Paul is here from the Business Association. And I'm sure you all have had these conversations. So we do. We thank you all. We've got great committees. You guys really do. You take us to the next level. So we appreciate it.
In addition to the environmental benefits, I think programs like this enhance the cachet of the township and gives the place more appeal for people to live in. So it's the environment is our #1 priority, but as a side benefit, it's very important. The reputation of the township improves.
Yeah, and I think what else is important too is when it's a partnership as opposed to just falling on one entity, when you can collaborate together and achieve a goal that is for the public good. I think that's a huge benefit of that.
I also want to say, I really appreciate the focus on supporting businesses. Rather than penalizing them or trying to tell them what to do, the positive outlook, I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, I think it's a two-way conversation
Yeah.
that needs to happen, so.
Any
Thank you.
other questions?
Anything
I think-
formally we have to do?
I think I hear your step. I think probably, or hear your support. I'm sorry. I think the next step probably will be, and I'll work with Rich. I think we probably should do some kind of resolution, just kind of putting this all in a support piece. And then we'll move forward with that and then continue to work with the EAC and work out the details. Because obviously they've done an excellent job putting this together. A few things just to make sure we have you talks about going on the website. We'll work on getting a thing on the website that people can fill out and how we then get it, also it populates on the website the way we want. So it'll take us a little bit of time to get it up, but I think we have the structure in place and we'll work with them because it's obvious that you're giving your support. And so we'll go from there.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We will now move down to 8.3, the St. Alban Circle presentation with Mr. Sharretts.
Good evening, George Sharretts, Director of Public Works. I just want to give a quick update on the line painting work that was done at St. Alban Circle in April and ask your direction on one thing. So St. Alban, we just have 4 slides to kind of illustrate what we're talking about. St. Alban Circle was, of course, investigated as a place for traffic calming measures. On the first slide, you see a sketch of what the traffic pattern looked like until the fall of 2021, last year. In particular, I want to identify there were 2 lanes heading into the circle from Westchester Pike. One immediately went on the Rhodes Avenue, the other one went into the circle. And then there was a 20-foot lane coming out of the circle heading toward Westchester Pike. On slide number 2, you'll see what was done by Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission working in conjunction with Gather in the Circle when they did testing for traffic calming there. And again, that was last fall. And the concept there was to create more walkability and to try to slow traffic down going through the circle. So it was a test. And at the end of the test, we restored, which you'll see on slide number 3, we restored the circle to what the pattern that had been there before, with the exception that you had requested that the crosswalks remain that had been installed. So those crosswalks stayed as well as the signage with them. What Public Works had asked you back in April was, could we test the island on the southern side of the circle, which, while we had set it up as a work zone, was working to slow traffic as it went through. It was only 1 lane going into the circle. It was a smaller lane coming out of the circle. So we asked if when we restored the painting, could we paint it up in that larger format? You granted that permission. We did that, I'm pleased to report that the traffic has been moving very well through the circle. I think that it's calmed somewhat. The traffic going through, again, now there's only one lane going into the circle, which then has to take its time, either making the right on the roads or heading into the circle. The pedestrian facilities help, not only permitting people to go to walk more safely in that area, but drivers going through there realize that there's pedestrians, and it's just a reminder. So when we did it, it was for the purpose of the traffic pattern. It wasn't for a visual or beautification. It was testing the traffic pattern. With the traffic pattern working and the possibility that the island could potentially become a permanent fixture in that format, we had spoken before about whether it could possibly be green space at some point. And as a result, we want to ask about taking the testing to the next step for a couple months. And Public Works would like to request to go ahead and paint that green to just get, again, it's only traffic paint and it's not permanent. It could go back if we ever decided we wanted to restore it to the original, but it could start giving us a sense as to what that could look like as green space and see if that's something we'd want to pursue in the future. I would say if you want to take that next step and we do it, and later on you want to take it a step further, we do have a three-dimensional version that we could do at the end of the summer, which would provide some temporary curbing and some, again, three-dimensional aspects to that island. But so that is the update. We just wanted to tell you how things went since April. We're happy with the traffic pattern. We would suggest painting that island green and starting to get a sense of what it could look like as green space. And again, we could change it back if it's decided to go in that route.
George, you're gonna put some of those white, like markers up, like the 2-foot high markers, so people understand it's an island and they don't drive across it. How are you gonna differentiate it so people don't think they can drive on it?
Sure. So one of the things, the fact that it's painted out is going to discourage people from going across it. I would say this, right now it's only painted with yellow lines, and people are not driving across it that we've been watching and witnessing. I don't know if the police have noticed anything unusual with it, but people are following the traffic pattern. I think when we do this, we can tighten it up and make sure the lines are really what they, pristine. But so far, I think painting it out that way would prevent them from going across.
Hey, George,
Yes.
would you also have those white borders, I'm assuming, on the around the triangle?
Yes. So we definitely would maintain the appropriate pavement markings for the island.
Right.
And then the green paint would go on the inside of those markings.
Right. So I think that would, to Mike's point, that would curtail people going into the green space when they see the white mark, representing the lane.
Yes, and the perimeter markings would be the reflective paint as well. The green would not be, but the border markings would be.
Right. Okay,
And-
thanks. Yeah, good idea. That's my thought.
Yeah, and George, this is part of the whole, there's more traffic calming, correct? That's happening beyond roads and I forget all the other name of the streets that are in and around that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because it's like water, right?
Yes.
You fix one place, but water will find its another direction. So people are gonna, they'll go into the neighborhoods, but this is part of a whole plan. Am I right? Am I?
That's correct.
Am I taking this too far, George?
No, I think that it's fair to say that probably at the next meeting, we'll be back into you. George and I have met, we've talked, and we're going to get out with Chris and we're going to talk about placement. We have 6 temporary speed tables. And we'll be presenting to you in July, the concept of where those temporary speed tables would go in this neighborhood as all part of the traffic calming, along with potentially another painting area to really kind of address this whole area. If you'll remember, George, correct me, this was probably one of the first areas that came in with traffic calming concerns other than Sawmill.
That is correct. That is correct. And again, that is part of why DVRPC and Gathering the Circle wanted to try to do something last year to test it. It was good to test it the way they did, and this is kind of building off of that.
And this has been something that you, even before I mean, they've kind of prompted it, but I know Public Works has been looking at this and the police department and the township as a whole has been looking at this area because of the traffic issues because they're tight little neighborhoods back there. And with all that volume of traffic coming off of Westchester Pike, they do need some relief.
That is exactly correct.
And the same as with Ellis over here, I'm sure those speed tables have helped tremendously to slow down the traffic along there as well.
Yeah, we've actually received several emails thanking us for the ones there. Not so much of the ones on Sawmill, but
Yeah.
but for sure the ones on Ellis. But I would say that, going back, I think this particular neighborhood probably almost goes back to 2016 when people started coming in and expressing concerns about traffic calming. And if you'll remember, the two areas that were the biggest were going up Winding Way, if you
Yes.
continued on, and also straight up coming, if you were coming up Winding Way and turning onto St. Albans. Both of those areas were a big issue. And one of the things that we've struggled with is the fact that they're on the hill there, both of them. So we're approaching this time a little differently. We're doing a more approach that's a little bit wider. And hopefully this will attack it in a way that's really positive for the neighborhood.
And George, we have the crosswalks still, those remain, correct? I did think you said that.
Exactly,
right?
yes. The 3 crosswalks on the other sides, the northern, eastern, and western sides are there.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? Thank you very much, Mr. Sharretts.
So I just want to be clear, because I'm not hearing any nays. George is going to be painting the screen tomorrow morning at about 5 o'clock.
Start painting, George. Start painting.
Thank you very much.
If you guys want to do mosaics of us or somehow, you can put that in there to make it look like Mount Rushmore. I will now move down to 8.4, the proposed 2023 personnel budget presentation by Mr. Lafiata. We got all the presentations in before the summer break.
Well, again, I just would make note, as we go through this, understand, this is preliminary. This is, if this presentation we're giving you tonight kind of is I would say our dream. If nothing were to stand in our way financially, we might even have a little bit more that we'd be asking for. But these are the things that if finances are there, we think these are the most important things as we move forward. So I just want you to know that, understanding that there will probably have to be an adjustment to this. When you see the number, you'll understand why.
So when starting off with the personnel budget, we always like to give an overview of the entire township and how it functions. Obviously, you have the citizens at the top with the elected officials and the appointed officials. And then on your left-hand side, you'll see the township manager with all the 5 major departments underneath it. So moving on to the first department, which we call legislative, which would be the Board of Supervisors as well as the elected auditors. In 2022, we had 5 Board of Supervisors and 3 elected auditors budget. In 2023, we don't see that changing. Obviously, a lot of that's set by state code. So if you go to the next slide, you will see there's no change from 2022 in our 2023 proposed budget. Moving on to the tax collector, very similarly, there is one tax collector with some temporary help that comes in during high tax season. And also, we are not proposing any changes from 2022 to 2023. Moving on to admin, in last year's budget, we proposed having 2 interns, one in admin, one in finance. Both of those were removed from the 2022 budget. We're proposing to bring them back to the 2023 budget. In addition, we're also proposing to move some portion of a finance individual into admin to help possibly write some additional grants. So as you'll see, there was 3 full-time admins, 1 part-time admin, and a temporary budgeted in, and 0 budgeted in 2022. We're proposing 3.5 full-time. That's the move from the finance position into the admin, keeping the part-time and adding our intern back in.
I'm sorry.
Overall, the 2022 budget had $379,000 budgeted to admin personnel. We're proposing an increase of $60,000, bringing the total to $439,231. Moving on to my favorite department, the finance department. We're proposing to add a part-time bookkeeper to help with some reporting, potentially taking our reporting to the next level with some of the reports that we've been talking about over the past couple of years. We want to add the intern back in as well. And as I spoke about before, we are going to reallocate some finance resources over to the admin department to help with some grant writing. In 2022, we had 3.5 full-time finance employees. We are proposing 3.5 full-time finance employees in 2023, as well as the 1 temporary intern. Overall, those 2 primary changes are going to cost about $22,000 more. Moving on to public safety. Back in 2016, we started the process of hiring a total of 4 new officers. This would be our 4th officer for the additional patrol officer. In addition, the police department has been notified that 2 police officers are going to be resigning in June. To help with that, the loss of experience, they would propose that hire 2 replacement officers in January and have them work simultaneously until the 2 officers leave in June and replace them. So they had 6 months of training to get ahead of the curve. In 2022, we had 20 full-time budgeted, 1 school resource officer, 2 admin, 0 part-time uniform, and 2 crossing guards. In 2023, we're proposing to hire the additional officer, keeping in mind that we're going to hire the 2, but the 2 are going to come off by the end of 2023. Keep the SRO, have still the 2 non-uniform admin. We currently have a part-time non-uniform admin, and continue with the 2 crossing guards.
I would make note that the non-uniform admin, about halfway through the year would stop, that we kept the person on to help us get through the accreditation. And we think that's going to be about middle of the year in that. I also would note that and I apologize, when we talked about the grant writer, there's also dollars in there for a third party to help with that, to be reviewing what we're doing and taking it to the next level, but to build the skill in-house and then to take it to to have somebody who does this professionally, review what we do, to make recommendations to make it better, and also to review it to see if there's anything we can do to, really be on the top of our game with those. Oops, sorry.
So overall, that is an increase of $371,000. I would like to make note that approximately $100,000 of that is contractual. According to the collective bargaining agreement, the officers are scheduled for a 3.25% increase, which is about $100,000. The remainder of that would be for the 2 additional officers. Well, 1 additional officer and then the 2 that run simultaneously.
Hey, Rich,
Yes.
the breakdown on the 2 officers for 6 months, what is the cost of that overlap? Just the overlap piece for.
So it's approximately $140,000 for a new officer. So if you're running 2 officers simultaneously, it's $140,000 from January to June.
Okay.
approximately.
All right, so you got 100,000 in the contractual increase is 140, and then the rest, the other changes you outlined. Okay.
Correct. So moving on to codes, the codes department is proposing a half-time codes administrative position, more for in-house scanning, with anticipation of us moving to be more electronic than paper-based. Codes has 3 full-time budgeted as well as a fire marshal, and they're asking for the same thing in 2023, just with the part-time admin add. Overall, that would be an increase of $33,557 for the codes department. Last but not least, the public works department, there's 8.5 full-time employees. And when I say half, they have a half time, they actually share the other half of the finance admin person at this point. So there's 8.5 budgeted full-time, 1 facilities person that is currently empty, 1 winter help, and 2 summer help. In 2023, they're proposing the exact same thing. So with no changes and some salary adjustments from when we hired some people, that's an additional $36,971. So overall, as Steve said, there will need to be some adjustments made, but right now, with all those changes in the budget, we're looking at an increase of $523,575 from the 2022 budget to the 2023 budget.
Any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public? Rich, you might as well stay out there because you're going to respond most likely.
Probably not as many questions, so you can take a seat for a while. Louis Rosenthal, 20 Harrison. I would sort of make a comment at the outset. Despite the advance apologies, the increase for a township that's in a growing mode is no great shakes. If I were to look at this as any other business, we're not in stasis. There's activity going on all over the township. More people are moving in, requiring more municipal services. So I'm always a little concerned about people who apologize for the numbers they're about to present, when in fact they're actually pretty good. So that's just a personal comment. There was a process that I guess started 5 weeks ago, a public input into the budgeting process. There were 2 sessions held, an afternoon and an evening session, and a number of folks attended. All of that was compiled and presented to the Finance Committee 12 days ago, and I would have expected the Finance Committee to make a presentation in advance of something like this. In that summary, which I'm sure you'll get from the Finance Committee, there was actually well-articulated expectations on the part of those people who attended for enhanced services. For example, 1 or 2 additional leaf collection opportunities. Those would obviously inform George and his department on staffing, and so this may be a personnel budget that is just services as usual, but I would encourage the supervisors to seek the input from the Finance Committee and some of the public's input that went into that, because I thought it was a great opportunity to sort of insert some thoughts. So I encourage you to do that. In terms of details, and Rich can probably guess some of the things that I'll go through. And again, these are things I'm encouraging the supervisors to look at when they look at some of these numbers. You did mention there is some contractual wages with the uniformed police officers. If there's any other contractual amounts, they should be sort of a little bit more clearly presented. Again, this was a summary, so I'm sure that will come versus what's discretionary. And I'm sure there are some budgeted salary increases which are reasonable. The line item benefit costs, I'm not sure if that includes the required pension contributions or that would be included someplace else, or if that's included in wages, and we might want to just identify what some of those things are. Any area that has new staff, in the case of, I guess, the additional police officers, I think we talked about overlapping them 6 months with the retiring police officers. But there may also be training costs. And so as you bring on new staff, there's going to be additional training costs. And I would encourage the supervisors to dig into that as well. And then there were, I don't remember off the top of my head, I can go back to the presentation. There were a couple of departments that were shown where salaries went up a little bit, but benefits went down. And I didn't actually understand the relationship of that. And so that's all I would highlight in terms of some of the details, Rich. I would encourage the supervisors to, seek out the input that the residents provided in that budget session, because the stuff that I'm a big fan of would naturally increase the staff in George's department, without a doubt. Thank you. Those are my comments. No questions for you, Rich.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rosenthal. And you actually raised the point that I should have noted, that the comments from those public workshops, what Rich did was he compiled that all into essentially a memo and sent that out to us. So we did see everything that was written. So thank you for actually raising that. It's a good point.
I would make a quick note, benefit wise, one of the things Rich and I talked about, for 4 or 5 years, we've heard back from our health insurance that we've not had an increase. And so far, we've chosen not to budget an increase going into 2022 or 2023. We're waiting to hear from them, and it'll probably be about another month before we'll really know that number. And so we didn't want to artificially set a number higher than what we needed to for that. And sometimes when you saw budget benefit numbers be up or down, it might have had to do if we shifted a full-time person who was being split, whereas we brought, for like in the finance department, we actually took somebody who is full-time, who's partly doing public works and partly doing finance, moved their role over to administration for the grant writing, and then brought in a part-time person, not temporary, but a part-time person to do just bookkeeping. But somebody that has a very specific skill that I actually think will get more hours, will get better use of the hours because they have the skill to do the job. And so that's kind of the thing we're looking at.
Yeah, in addition, we also had some employees that were budgeted for family, dropped down to different benefit plans that were cheaper in some departments.
Got it. Any other comments from the board or questions? Nothing else from the public?
One other note that I would just make is this is just personnel part. We'll be talking about operations part. We'll also be talking about capital in that. And so we'll just know that you're going to be seeing those budget numbers over the next several meetings, a couple months.
Thank you, Rich. Look, the budget came out and the lights are already shutting off. My goodness.
Everything we can do to save a dime.
Yeah, everything we can do to save a
Oh,
buck.
well.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move down to section 9, appointment of a township official. 9.1, appointment of a township, appointment of a conflict counsel. Is there a motion? Turn your mic
on. I'd like to move to appoint Raphael Pupio for conflict counsel.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Chandler, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lakehap to appoint the law firm of Raphael Pupio as conflict counsel. Is there any board discussion? I do just want to note one thing. We, in the prior setup that we had with our former solicitor, we had Mr. Catania as the solicitor, Mr. Secor as the special counsel. And so we were able to, when there was conflicts, whether there was a legal conflict where Joe couldn't handle something, Rich would handle it. If Rich couldn't handle it, Joe would handle it. The position of conflict counsel is important for a municipality as a former municipal attorney for a litany of things. One, when there's an actual legal conflict, but more importantly, when there's situations where the township solicitor needs to act as the prosecutor, there needs to be an attorney to advise the board, whether that is in a curative amendment with in a zoning setting, a personnel matter, or a few other where we need to have an advisor to the board. And so that's what the role of conflict counsel is. Mostly every municipality has one. If not, then they have to go out and find an attorney real quick before their matter comes up for something. So this is just planning ahead for whenever there is a potential conflict, both in a legal sense or whenever we need an advisor to the board. So that's the reason for that. Any other board comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We'll now move down to reports. 10.1, report from the police department. Chief Lunn, do you have anything you need to add? Thank you very much, Chief. 10.2, report from the fire department. Chief Everlof, do you have anything you want to add? You want to talk about Pints in the Square at all? Or nothing to add?
Am I on?
You're on.
So the fire company is hosting the Pints in the Square. So pre-COVID, this was an event. It was a big fundraiser for the fire company. And I think after the first bout of COVID, we put the event in hiatus. It's a 5K run and a beer fest. It's going to take place this year, September 17th, from 11 to 12 is the 5K run. And from 12 to 4 will be the beer fest. It's going to take place at the Delaware County Veterans Memorial. I believe the address is 4599 Westchester Pike. So we are looking obviously for support from the business association for sponsorships. And we're also looking for obviously runners and, the residents and businessmen to attend the event. So I see you smiling.
It's a nice way.
But it's a great event. We've had great success the first 3 years that we had it. And so we're hoping for the same this year. And while I'm on that, so October 8th will be our housing and building dedication. So that's going to take place October 8th. I'll have more information as when the time comes, but we invite all the township residents and obviously the Board of Supervisors to attend. So more to follow on that.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
You're
10.3, report from the emergency medical services. I don't believe the chief is here, and so there's nothing to supplement on that one. 10.4, report from the Public Works Director, Mr. Sharretts. Do you have anything to add? Thank you very much. 10.5, report from the Building/Codes Officer. Mr. Rezchek is not here, so there's nothing to add there. 10.6, report from the Finance Director, Mr. Lafiata. Do you have anything you want to add? 10.7, report from the Library Director. Ms. Caruso is not here, so nothing to add on that one. 10.8, report from the EAC. Mr. Killen, do you have anything to add? He is no longer here, so nothing to add on that one. 10.9, report from Parks and Rec. Mr. Pollock is not here, so nothing to supplement on that. 10.10, report from Leisure Services. Mr. Enhouse not here, so nothing to add there. 10.11, report from the Township Engineer. Ms. Iacone. Thank you very much. I believe I do have a question, though. The Heights drainage investigation, Avenues drainage investigation, and the Florida Park drainage investigation. What are our timelines to have something before the board so that we can start?
The Heights has been completed and sent over to Mr. Neese. The Avenues should be wrapped up hopefully by the end of this week and will be sent over, and Florida Park probably within the next 2 weeks.
Got it. Perfect.
I have a question. On this report, the paving report, the street conditions on ID number 527 Springhouse Lane,
It says it was paved in 2020, yet it's saying it's in fair condition. And it's got 21.4% cracking. Is that a misprint?
Was that 527 you said?
527 Springhouse Lane. It's saying the general pavement surface conditions fair, and it was paved in 2020. I'm hoping it's not fair 2 years.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and take a look at that one. I will make a note.
Yeah, can you just take a look at that? It seems to me like that might just be a mistake.
Definitely can look at that.
Any other questions for the township engineer? Seeing none, we'll now move down to the township manager, Mr. Neese.
Yes, I just have a couple things to kind of make sure that you're aware of. First of all, Drexel Lodge Public Works team is working with the Parks and Rec Committee, and they're going to work over the next month or so to start installing the bocce ball courts over there. We had thought we had some volunteers who were going to do some of that work. That's not happened, and so Public Works is going to be doing it and moving forward with that. The next thing, if you recall, you gave us permission to advertise, actually, I believe 3 times now, at least twice, but I think it's 3 times now for the janitor position. In all of that, I'm going to say we had 0 resumes. We actually had 1. We did a quick background check and we could not hire that person. So we have basically had 0 resumes that we can look at. We're proposing to go back out and put it out on a social media post as long as there's no objection from the board right now. I don't want to pay to re-advertise and be in the same spot, but I'm thinking if we could do like a pretty heavy social media outreach, see if we can see what happens and go from there, if that's okay.
I don't think you have any objections here. on the board.
I would make note, I know Arlene wasn't here, but the library has gone fine-free. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but they've gone fine-free. So that's one thing just to let you know. And then just wanted to make sure the board was aware. Ellis Preserve came in requesting sewer capacity issues. They had 12,000 gallons left. There was multiple conversations about where they were going to use that 12,000 gallons. If you recall, they're still working on getting the rest of what they need, but they're going to move ahead with the first 4, I'm going to call them retail buildings as part of that 12,000 gallons. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. And
I'm sorry, so does the retail include the hotel or?
it does not.
Separate? Okay.
It does not.
So
This is truly the retail section. Originally, I think they had talked about using that 12,000 to do the office space.
Mhm.
They've since backed down on that and they're moving ahead with the retail first because they've got vendors who are ready to come in and be in those spaces. And so for the township, that means we'll get some of those retail spaces up and operational more quickly. And I think that's a positive for us because I think those are some of the things that people have been waiting for.
Exactly.
And it's also what fronts Westchester Pike. And so those buildings will be built first.
Thank you.
Okay. That's all I have at this time.
Perfect. Any questions for the township manager? Seeing none, we'll move down to section 11, budget adjustment, 11.1. Can I get a motion to approve the budget increase 2022-03, increasing the capital budget as follows? Increase revenue account 30-300-00-279-00, use of fund balance by $12,435. Increasing expense account 30-407-90-704.04 audiovisual equipment by $12,435. The increase will come from the use of fund balance. These funds will be used to make audio video repairs for the upstairs and downstairs meeting rooms due to equipment failure. Motion is made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Chandless. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Section 12, payments, 12.1. Can I get a motion approving the $5,953.50 escrow release payment to Hill Buick GMC at 3960 Westchester Pike for a completed planning project?
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Chandler, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Is there any board discussion?
I just want clarification, I'm sorry. This is the work that they started a while ago in the back for their parking lot? This has been a project a few years, I think?
Yes, I believe that's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
they had a planning escrow and then they had a construction escrow, so
And they're.
they are
all
completed with all of that, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other board comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. 12.2, can I get a motion approving the $394 escrow release payment to Hill Buick GMC at 3960 Westchester Pike for a completed grading project?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Chandler, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. 12.3, can I get a motion approving the $70.75 escrow release payment to Teresa De Olivia at 3504 Goshen Road for a completed grading project?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Chandler, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. 12.4, can I get a motion approving the $100 permit review fee refund to Menta Construction? The work does not require a permit.
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Chandler, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Section 13, bills. I will make a motion to approve the bills on check register A dated June 27, 2022, totaling $673,433.44.
Second.
Motion was made by the chair, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. 13.2, I will make a motion approving the bills on EFT registered dated June 27, 2022, totaling $815.67.
Second.
Motion was made by the chair, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Section 14, new business. 14.1, consider adopting the 2021 audit, which was the presentation we heard.
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Chandler, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. 14.2, can I get a motion considering authorizing the staff to work with and request the engineer who wrote the structural repairs report for Bartram Bridge to draw the bid package of required work?
So move.
Motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Chandler. Is there any board discussion?
Is this, I just have a question. Bartram Bridge, are we, once this goes out to bid, because I know there's the Bartram Bridge, what is it called?
Commission, yeah.
Commission, will this cost be split between us and Willistown?
Yeah, so if you'll recall back when we went through the budgeting process, we worked with Willistown to make sure that both communities budgeted, I believe it was $150,000 from each, $125,000 from each committee, from each community for a $250,000 project. And most of that project was focusing on structural issues at the bridge. There's some, there's a stone embankment area that needs to be shored up. I know at least on the one side, I think actually on both sides. And then we also went out, and if you remember last meeting, you gave me the authorization to sign all the paperwork on a grant we got. We got a grant for $100,000. That grant was written to using the money that we got from the two communities as an offset to do more of, it's structural, but it's more of the woodwork that's on the bridge that needs replacement and repair. Again, what we want to do, because the Joint Commission doesn't really have the authority to go out and do a project on their own, we need to do that through the township. And so we're going to start the process. I don't know if you know or not, but Willistown is in the process of, they just hired a new public works person and their manager is leaving. And so they're looking for that. And so we want to get the process started.
Yes.
We don't want to be held up, but we want to basically put everything into place so that we can send it over to them. And it's an easy already package to move
Mhm.
forward. But
Makes
we're going to
sense.
use the engineer that both townships agreed to do the structural study to actually build the bid package.
Another push to say with our historic ordinance
Yes.
to show that the township really does care about our historic structures, be it a building or a bridge.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Any other board comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 14.3, consider accepting the proposal from Farrell Carrata to supply and install the Norway spruce tree at St. Albans Circle.
Which one?
Well, let's do the discussion real quick. So hold on. So motion was made by Supervisor Chanlis. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Supervisor Roberts Ledcat. And now we'll get into board discussion.
I think that what George and I mean, obviously they gave you a bid of, I believe, $65, $75, and $8,500. And that's based on the size of the tree. What we originally thought that you would be able to go out and one or two of you would be able to go out to the site and pick out the tree that we're going to bring in. Evidently, the 26 and the 28 footers are in Harrisburg, and the 18 footers are here in King of Prussia. And so we thought, well, what he suggested was that we could go out and have somebody look at the 18 footer. And if you still think you want a taller tree than that, then we would go ahead and he could pick, based on what we picked as what we liked, he could go pick that out in a taller version and bring that and do the planting. And that's why we don't have a dollar amount right now. We just want to have the authority to move forward with him. It will be one of those $3 amounts, depending on what size tree we end up picking, and we would bring that specifically back to the board when we're ready to take the next step. But
How fast is the 18-foot grow to the next?
you know that answer, George? I don't.
I do not. I can find out from them. One of the things I was going to do, though, was to mark on the pole that's out at St. Albans now where the 18-foot mark is, so that you could get a sense as to how large the tree is.
Can you do it for all of them, actually?
I could probably do that, sure.
Can you
Sorry,
just?
sorry,
Because it's a 30-foot pole.
Now, when it
Yeah.
gets taller, it gets wider.
Correct.
So will that impact, I mean, the circle's pretty big. But I mean, as it gets bigger, does it get a lot bigger on the bottom or?
Oh, wow. So it does get larger on the bottom. I can find out from the contractor what that size is each year, and we can measure it out so we make sure we've got that space out there. Again, I would just say from an 18-foot standpoint, although that seems like the smallest tree, when I measured it over at our Public Works garage, it actually goes up to the ceiling where the beam is that the electronic hoist is. So it's all the way up to the top. You could very easily go over and
But we're
say,
so used to
that is a large tree.
We're used to a 30-foot pole. So now we've got, that's what, now it's going to look small. you know?
Yes.
Do you know if is there a guarantee with this contractor? Like if it dies in a year, like?
I believe there was a 1 year.
That's
Yeah.
what I recall as well, was a 1-year guarantee on it.
So I have two questions. One, I'm guessing the arborist has looked at this and this is the type of tree he's fine with
That
this.
was the arborist recommendation.
Yeah, so it was actually it was specifically the arborist recommendation. It is one of the trees that is on the tree commission's preferred tree listing. And back in 2019, when we were looking at the old tree, looking to see if it could be saved, and that one was a Colorado spruce, the arborist we brought in at that point had recommended a Norway spruce.
Got it. The second thing I have is I know that he, on this sheet here, he recommends removing, it looks like barberry shrubs. What I would recommend, I mean, my suggestion or thought would be that we either have this consultant or our arborist prep that site, tell us what we need to do to make sure that we make it well past the 1 year.
I think that if this is an interest that you have, and we've talked about, I know some of you shared that you really would like to see us get a tree. I think it would be wise that not as a group altogether, but we go out as separately, you and I and George, and have a conversation about some of your thoughts about what we would like that to look like. Because I think we are going to have to take a look at that as a whole.
Yeah.
George and I have talked, there may be some answers that would change a little bit how we would approach, how we go about this and what we would do.
So do
Move
you,
forward with the tree, that's not the question, but exactly where we put it within the circle and how we kind of make sure that it has a long life in that location.
And you can't plant this till fall anyway.
That's correct.
That is correct.
We want to get everything lined up so that he can come in the end of October, beginning of November timeframe and get it in. And at that point, we can then have it in place for our tree lighting come December.
got it. So Steve, is it easier for us to amend this motion to just say, at a cost not to exceed 8,500, since it's the highest one on here?
Well, the reason why we didn't do that is if you came back and you said, we really want it to be 30 feet, we would get the cost for 30 feet. We took what he gave us and what he said he had. When we originally started this, we thought you were going to be able to go to King of Prussia and say, that's the tree I want. And if it was 30
Like the
feet.
Griswold Christmas, right?
Yeah, the Griswold Christmas, yeah. We thought you would be able to do that. And so that's not what's going to happen unless somebody really wants to drive out to Harrisburg with him the day that he goes out there to do it. We purposely didn't set an amount because if you decide something different, we think we're going to have to come back to you anyhow. Once you get a chance, if you go out and look at what he has on site, you may say, we really like this one, but this is the one we think we really want. And so George and I left you the freedom. We are really just having the decision we think you're making tonight is to work with this vendor.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
think he's the best vendor based on what we know.
Perfect. Any other board comments? So the motion was made and seconded. There's no more board discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 14.4, consider waiving all township-related fees associated with the Plainton Square fundraiser for the fire company.
So move.
Motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Chandler. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 14.5, can I get a motion approving change order number 1 relative to the line striping bid, which was accepted at the April 11, 2022 board meeting? This change order covers all crosswalks at the school zone at Westchester Pike, Valley View Lane, and at the Westchester Pike / Radnor Drive. If you choose not to accept the change order, you will be rejecting alternative numbers 1 and 2 for the line striping project.
So move.
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Do you have anything you want to add to this?
Well, I just want to make sure you understand exactly what's happening here so that you're really clear, because it is a little bit different than typically what we would do with a change order. You would accept a change order or not accept a change order. When we went out to bid for this, we thought we were going out and bidding the whole crosswalk being painted at that location. I say the whole, I believe there's 4 crosswalks at each of the 2 intersections. It was actually written up as just the side street on the one side as being what was bid. So the change order is to do all 4 crosswalks at each location versus just the one side street. And so if you were to say, no, I don't want to do this, we would be, the crosswalks were done as 2 alternates, alternate 1 and alternate 2. We would eliminate the 2 alternates that you awarded prior with the bid, if that makes sense. We would go back and say, we're not going to do those 2 alternates.
How's the board want to proceed? We fine with the motion? They're been moved and seconded. Any other? We're good? No one else? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. 14.6, consider accepting the updated road evaluation report and authorize staff to post this information on the township website.
So move.
Motion is made by Supervisor Chandler, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Any board discussion? The only question I have is, now that we have this information, because I know the one we had on the website, I think was old, and it was just, we were just 1 year ago, yeah. Outside of us just having this information, are we looking at doing another road program? What are we looking at doing here?
So if you'll, sorry. So if you'll recall, we did a very large program in 2020. Or 2020, right? Yes. And so that program, we did about 11 miles of roadway. And we took out a loan to do that. Last year, we actually had 2 payments that we were making. We were paying off the 16 project, and we started paying off the 20 project. This year's the first year we are just having a single payment, and we don't think there's enough money this year to do anything. We may look at a project in 2023. I'm making sure I get my dates right with the audit. I feel like I'm always behind. We're just wanting to know how much money we actually have to be able to do that, because if you'll recall, and part of that will be on what if the board, when we present under capital, one of the things we're going to present is actually increasing the road program another 50,000, which will take us up to 400,000. We believe that there's enough money in our liquid fuels dollars to make the payment, and then we would then use the money, the 350 from this year and the 400. We could probably do a smaller program in 2023 moving forward. We need to get that loan paid off so we can go back and do a bigger project and move forward, but we need to get that. We have a 5-year note on that. Is that right, Rich? Yeah. That's kind of where we are. So we would spend the rest of this year probably making a plan based on the dollars that we think we're going to have, what we think 750,000 would cover. Right now, I don't really want to go out to a road program, to be honest with you, at the cost of fuel. Asphalt goes up in relationship to that cost. I'm hoping that the cost of fuel comes down, and then that would be the time to go out and do a program.
Steve, I just have 2 other follow-up questions. The next one is to ensure that we don't run in, I mean, is this something that we should be doing every 2 years, this update here? Is it something we'd be doing every 5 years? What is it? And that might be a question for Giovanni. I mean, what is the standard practice so that we can ensure that we're staying on top of that?
I think you could, every 5 is probably acceptable. I think the original one we did was in 2012.
Okay.
And since that time, 83 segments of roadway have shown deteriorating conditions. So 40% of the roads deteriorated in condition since 2012. Based on the ratings in front of you, 65% of the roadways are ranked in excellent and good condition, and 35% are ranked poor fair condition.
And we have 52 miles roughly of roadway in the township.
Correct.
And
That
in
is
the last
correct.
7 years, we've paved 27 miles, give or take of that.
I think that sounds about right. It may be a little bit longer than 7, it may be 8, but the one thing I would make note, you mentioned the 52 miles of roadway. We believe that we really need to be repaving at least once every 25 years.
Yep.
And that's the reason why we're trying to build the road program fund, so that we have enough money that probably every 2 years we're doing a road program, because we would have that right amount of money between what we get from liquid fuels and what we put into it. We would be able to do about 2 miles, average of 2 miles a year, but we would do a 4 mile program every other year. That's the goal.
Giovanni, you said, what was the other breakdown? 65% is fair or excellent?
65% is excellent/good, and 35% poor/fair.
And of that 52 miles of roads in the township, how many miles are PennDOT roads?
None.
No, there's 52 are
This
ours.
is ours.
This
that's
evaluation.
All
ours. Okay.
52 are ours.
That's ours.
So we've
Okay.
paved over half of it in the last so many years. The last question I have is, it's great to have this information and we can have this dialogue back and forth. not to add more to your plate, but I think that it would be helpful if there was a key to this data when it gets published on the website, so that the residents can actually understand what it means when they look at, well, what is, the fatigue cracking?
Okay.
What is the longitudinal cracking, edge cracking, curb type, stuff like that. Just so residents can have that information and actually, utilize it as opposed to just staring at it. And I think that those statistics that you gave, if you can put that somewhere on there too, that would be helpful.
Okay, I will make those changes as well as look into what Mr. Russo had inquired about, and then I will send you an updated spreadsheet.
The one other thing I would just bring to your attention, and George and I have had a short conversation on not too long ago. In the avenues, we tried something different. We tried that ultra-thin bonding wearing course. Am I saying that right? Thank you. We tried the ultra-thin bonding wearing course, and so far we've had very good, it's done very well. And we did it there purposely because we had roads that had recently been kind of updated because I think there was some work done in there by Aqua. And then we had areas that were really starting to deteriorate pretty heavily. And we haven't noticed any real difference between where the roads were good and the roads had deteriorated. So we are having conversations. Are there some neighborhoods that we have poor condition roads or at least fair condition roads that we might try that product in to buy us a little bit longer period of time? And so that may be something we're going to try. We're not sure we think we want to do it on a high traffic road. We may try it in one high traffic road in a small area just to kind of get a feel of what it would do for us. But just want you to know we are looking at some alternatives to try to spread those dollars a little bit further and get more roads done sooner, get everybody up. Once we get into this cycle, we really do believe we have a plan that will allow us to keep our roads healthy going forward. We might need to add a little bit as the cost of living goes up, but we have a plan to have a base so that we're always prepared, always having the dollars needed to do that.
And I just need to hit on that just in case there's anyone watching this at home. And the reason why is that prior to you coming here and prior to our staff, we just never focused on the roads. And so now what you all have been focused on over the last 7 years is putting together a plan that essentially is just, it's turnkey. We're ready to go and we're moving and we're moving and we're moving, as opposed to just letting them deteriorate.
Yeah, I would just note that, George came about 2 years before I did. If I go back and he started laying the plan and saying these roads need to be done. And you all did a program, I think the year before I came. And then Rich and I, when we brought Rich on, we started looking at how do we finance this? And so we put the two together, not only the plan to how we get the roads done, but the financing so that we will be able to stay on top of it long-term.
And that's all I have for this. So the motion was made and seconded. I don't think there's any other board discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. 14.7, can I get a motion authorizing the township engineer to go out to bid for culvert repair in Echo Valley area? DEP is still reviewing the plans.
So moved.
Motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Russo. Is there any board discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
I just want to be clear on one thing. So in saying yes, I just want you to be aware that because DP is still reviewing the plan, they may come back and make a recommendation for change. And that we would have to either change during the time in which we're out, depending on how soon DEP gets back to us, or we would have to do a change order once the piece is done. We don't think there's anything major.
That's correct. So we submitted the DEP, but they are dragging their feet, even though I keep bugging them. And basically they have 93 business days to review what we submitted, which puts them at October 14th for final review. And obviously that's getting late into the season and not really ideal for construction. So their comments would mostly be around like erosion control and things like that. Our structural repairs and things that we're proposing to repair those end walls and head walls. It's not really something they're going to be commenting on. So we do believe that if there is any modifications, depending on when they come out, we might be able to just issue an addendum if we're in the middle of the bid process, or a change order during construction.
Got it.
It is, you know, a chance to take, but I don't know that you want to wait that long.
I'll take the 93 days.
They will, and then some probably.
All right, any other board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Section 15 is old business. We have no old business. Section 16, land development approval, 16.1. So Mr. Nolan and Jim, it's Gavin, right? Gade, are here today to talk about Stony Knolls, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Jim Gade, engineer of record for a property along Wayland Avenue, right next to Echo Valley Lane.
Can I just stop you real quick?
Sure.
So Jim is with Stantec, which is our engineer. So Mr. Porter is on the line, who is our conflict engineer from McCumbie Associates. So Giovanna will be sitting out on this, and Stantec has been walled off in accordance with professional responsibility. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear for anyone who's watching this or for anyone who's in the audience. With that being said, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So we're here representing the property along Wayland Avenue and Hunt Valley Circle. It's a 49 acre, 48 acre parcel. Last year, we were in front of the Planning Commission several times. Last year, we met with the residents along Hunt Valley Circle, Echo Valley Lane, and we got recommendation from the PC for a preliminary plan for 27 lots. In December, we met in front of the board and we got preliminary approval for 27 lots. In the interim, we resubmitted plans back to the township with only 13 lots. What we did is we had something like 29 to 3,500 linear feet of road. We reduced it to 1,700. We took 27 lots and we reduced it to 13. The density of the area went from on 27, there was 1 acre per lot, and with the 13 lots, now 3.7 acres per lot. The intent was that we just believed that having the 1.5 or 1.4 acre lots, which is allowed by R1 in that area, didn't seem right because those lots were generally a little bit bigger. So we decided to go with the 13 lot. We met in front of the planning board or planning commission several times. We went over the plans and got a recommendation for preliminary final approval based on certain conditions. Those conditions being a clean engineer, or clean review letter by the alternate engineer, an MPDS stormwater approval, an MPDS sanitary sewer planning module approval, and a couple of things we wanted to talk about here. We did make one change on the plan that was from the approval we got from the planning commission. One of the waivers we're going to ask for is the maximum length of a cul-de-sac. The maximum length of a cul-de-sac is roughly about 700 feet. This usually has to do with safety issues, access fire equipment, things like that. In talking with Carl Keenan, we asked for 1,700 linear feet waiver. And he came up and had several criteria. One of them was they had to be a minimum of 27 feet wide and restricted no parking on one side of the road. That's what we went in on the planning commission and got approval. We thought about that, and we know how people have a tendency to just ignore no parking signs. So in discussions with Mr. Keenan, we decided to increase the road width to 32 feet, which would prohibit any requirement for no parking. We told that to Mr. Keenan, and he was okay with that. So I will say that with all the discussions, both with the board on December and the planning commission, both last year and this year, we did talk a lot about stormwater management. The stormwater management concept is basically the same. We have 3 basins. We have swales along the road, all with the intention of making sure we don't impose stormwater problems on the adjacent residents on Echo Valley Lane and Hunt Valley Lane and Hunt Valley Circle.
Got it. And I'm guessing you've had conversations throughout this process with those neighbors, because the reason why I asked that, there's nobody here. in the audience, it looks like they're in opposition, and it seems that they, I mean, how have those conversations been?
Well, I think during the 27, we focused on stormwater and how it was going to impact the surrounding properties. And I think they were very satisfied with that. So when we came back with the 13 lots, some of them came to a couple of BC meetings and they were just, they were fine with the reduction of lots, the reduction of impervious, things like that.
Got it. Mr. Porter, do you have anything you want to add from an engineering perspective?
From an engineering perspective, I just want to add to kind of expand on the meetings with the adjacent residents. A couple of residents did come to the planning commission meetings, as Mr. Gate had indicated. We also had a separate meeting for the residents to ask, informally have a Q&A in the township building in the small conference room upstairs, which several residents took advantage of, and members of the Plan Commission participated in as well. So I can reiterate that the stormwater approach from an overall standpoint has come a long way, and they have gone above and beyond what they're obligated to do to address the concerns of the neighbors, in particular the neighbors to the south and the neighboring property kind of to the south and east of the cul-de-sac. So in addition to that, with the road widening of 32 feet from the 27 proposed through the planning process, obviously I would need to see additional calculations supporting the rate and volume reduction of that additional impervious coverage. Other than that, the Planning Commission saw no issue with the 4 waiver requests, one being for culverts required to be reinforced concrete pipe. And I know Delaware County Planning had sort of an issue with that. We went into some technical detail with the Planning Commission on that. I have no issue with the board favorably granting that waiver request. There was no issue with the preliminary/final processing of the plans concurrently. The cul-de-sac length, the code requires a maximum length of 750 feet. They're proposing about 780 feet or 1,780 feet. And then with the modifications to the plan and review and compliance with the fire marshal's letter, I think that the Planning Commission was favorable to that waiver request as well. And lastly, they're requesting a waiver for curb throughout the development because of the overall stormwater management approach. If the board recalls, the proposal is to handle all surface drainage in 2 roadside swales instead of proposing inlets, curbs, and gutters, and then piping everything. The thought process behind that is to take advantage of additional stormwater infiltration as the road drainage collects in the swales. So from an engineering perspective, aside from the revised calculations and the outstanding or pending permit from Delaware County Conservation District and the DEP, I have no further engineering issues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Porter. Is there any questions from the board?
Need to do anything?
Yeah, put your mic on and ask Abby.
Yeah, do we need to do anything different based on what Mr. Porter just said in terms of approving it pending his review? I thought I heard him say he needed to review one thing based on the change in width of the road or something.
So the way we typically do this is we go through all the letters and all the comments and all the plans back and forth and reduce it all down to a resolution that would incorporate all the requirements if you were to approve it. One of those requirements is that in order for them to have final land development approval that they can actually sign and record, they have to submit that additional information and have it approved.
Any other questions from the board?
I have a question. Isn't that one lot? Isn't there one lot on Hunt Valley Circle?
It's at the intersection of Hunt Valley Lane and Wayland, if you're talking about that.
You're not doing anything with that? You're not building anything on that lot?
No, we were originally going to have a stormwater basin there, but the high water table wasn't that conducive about it. So I think we're just going to leave it the way it is, kind of as an open space. There is no requirement to to donate open space to the township because it's a by right, with the exception of recreational, which we're giving a fee in lieu of for the recreational. So yeah, it's just basically going to be left as an open lot at this point.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Gade, I believe our solicitor talked to you this afternoon about a comment that we received with regards to, I guess, like a potential trail access point to the back of that development. You want to kind of touch on that a little bit?
Sure. If you could advance that slide, 2 or 3, I believe. One more, please. I'm sorry, one more. There you go. Okay. So what I think they're talking about is, I think they're talking about getting a trail. So I think they're talking about bringing a trail through an existing right of way here and then up along here and kind of connecting into the cul-de-sac. The problem with that is this whole back area, which is the reason why there's no houses there, is extremely wooded and extremely steep sloped. The dark areas, the very, very dark areas are steep slopes greater than 25%. And the lighter dark areas are anywhere from 15 to 25%. And the rest of it is close to the 10%. Not exactly conducive for walking trails. If you do, you should bring an oxygen tank with you because it's almost 500, 600 feet straight uphill. So typically you try to avoid terrain like that for walking trails.
Understood. Perfect. All right. Seeing no other comments from the board, I don't believe there's any comments from anyone in the public. Mr. Nolan.
Yes, please ask the board to consider Mr. Keene's request. I'll show you. He's asking. Basically, we had.
Mr. Nolan, if you can just go to, just because there's people who are watching it.
Basically, we had set the water line for the 1,770 feet that's going to go down our new road. We went over to Hunt Valley and tied into the existing line there and put in 1,367 feet. And then to loop it, we went out the back and looped it into Hunt Valley. That's sheet number 1, and that's a cost of about $16,460 per lot. But what Mr. Keene is asking us to do is to take the water line all the way up Hunt Valley, up Whitehorse Road to Pebble Spring Road, which is about 2,700 feet. He hasn't told me why, but if I had a guess, I would think it would be to get a second water source for Melmark. And he's asking us to add that to the 13 lots. And when we do that, it takes it all the way up to $25,149 per lot. It's like crazy. We don't need it. Aqua is fine with what we're doing. We have 1,100 PSI in the line. I mean, everything's fine. But Mr. Keene is requesting that we take the line all the way up to Pebble Spring, which is another 2,700 feet. It's another $151,000 for 13 lots.
Are you bringing the line? You have dashed line here for the 1770. Then you have a 680 feet that goes in Echo Valley. Are you proposing you're going to hit the Echo Valley line as your loop?
Yes. We're going into Echo Valley for the loop.
Was that always proposed, or was that your solution to his request?
That's what we already proposed. But Mr. Keene is requesting that we take the line, forget the looping at the back, and take 2,700 feet and go up to Pebble Spring, which for 13 lots is just incredible.
Are you bringing natural gas down the road to these 13 lots?
I'm sorry?
Are you bringing natural gas down the road to these 13 lots?
Natural gas is in the street.
It's in the street out here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would ask the board to please consider his request. You know, I took it from 27 lots to 13. I mean, I can go to Wells.
Understood. Rich, do we have, based off of this information, is that also in the draft that we have?
No. Compliance with Mr. Keene's letter is in the draft. I'm trying to pull up, maybe David has some information as to why. This is the first I'm hearing of this issue. I mean, I knew obviously what the letter said. I didn't know anybody had a problem with the letter.
Dave, while Rich is trying to pull up what he's pulling up, do you have anything you want to add?
I have not looked at anything, any correspondence from Aqua. You know, typically you want to have enough volume and rate or pressure for fire flow. And I suggested to the applicant that they coordinate that directly with the fire marshal and with Aqua. And if they needed to get calculations to document that they had sufficient volume and pressure, that they could get that from Aqua and present it to the fire marshal as supporting documentation. But I have not seen any of that information.
Dave, have you seen this proposal that Mr. Nolan handed to the board?
Yes.
No. Dave, did you?
I'm not sure what he handed to the board.
So basically, he has the plot plan that shows his water line connecting where the N is in Hunt Valley Lane, coming up Wayland Road, 1,367 feet, making right into his new development for 1,770 feet. Then at the cul-de-sac, I assume he's giving a utility easement to the town to go from the cul-de-sac 680 feet down to tie into the water line at Echo Valley Lane by the, I guess there's the already utility easement there of some sort. And then I guess Mr. Keenan wanted him to go, instead of going and tying in at that point on Echo Valley Lane, to go basically a half a mile down the road, down all the way down to some point on Whitehorse, correct?
Correct.
And he's got a little, and he just did it all in a drawing and handed that to us. So I guess we can have it scanned to him.
Yeah, I can take a picture.
Yeah.
Well, so what I would rather him have I mean, I don't think if he can read it based off of a picture.
I can understand from Mr. Russo's description what Mr. Nolan is proposing and what is being asked from the fire marshal. But again, without seeing actual numbers from Aqua, if Aqua is certifying that there's enough volume and pressure at that location as it's proposed by Mr. Nolan, from that standpoint, I don't have an issue. If the fire marshal takes issue with that, I think, you know, there needs to be further explanation as to why he's asking for what he's asking for.
So Dave, Mr. Nolan, what I will recommend is this. If you want to provide this documentation to the solicitor and the engineer and, you know, discuss this document that you handed to us, we can table this until you guys are ready to make a decision. I'm not comfortable voting on this until our officials look at it. So it's up to you. If you want us to move forward without looking at this, we can vote on what we have. Or if you want them to look at the documents that you gave us this evening, I would recommend tabling it until the next meeting for everybody to kind of come together and figure it out. I have no problem with them looking this over. I just myself, I'm not comfortable voting on this until all those people come together and have that discussion. So it's up to you. It's whatever you want to do tonight.
That's fine.
You want to do, you want to table it? Okay.
$151,000.
Yeah.
I think we can wait a week or two.
Extension. Our next meeting's not until July.
Give me the extension.
Okay.
And did you just like ask about the extension?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just another way to do it is just to approve it as is with the ability to come back and modify that one portion, and leave that one portion open, or even approve it as is with the ability of township staff, engineer, fire marshal to knock it down to the lower amount.
And that's fine with me too. It's ultimately your decision. I'm asking you, I'm requesting
Yeah.
that you look at this and
Right, well-
determine
So,
what's fair.
yeah, no, and so
Well,
based off of that, I mean, I
I
think
get, I
it's,
get it. I mean, that's his price today. It might be different when he goes to build this in 6 months. So I think we let him get his, whatever he has to do to start moving in a forward direction and take that under advisement, because if anything, it's only going to go up. It's not
Yeah.
going down.
Oh, yeah.
So
And just for, and
I'd say let, whatever Rich said, to have it under advisement, that we'll have our team review it with his team and have a discussion.
okay,
Yeah.
With the higher amount, but that we will consider after consultation with everyone else, lowering that at a
Right.
subsequent meeting.
Yeah.
And that way you can start.
That's
and-
fine.
all
I
right,
think
so that's
that's,
how we
I
want to
think that's
proceed.
more practical,
Yep.
yes.
Can we do that? All right. All right, so then, Rich, in terms of the process, do you want us to actually read these two motions, or just does Catherine just jump into the draft?
Right, just motion. It would be just a motion to approve the resolution of approval for the Stony Knoll development. Wherefore, be it resolved.
Nothing changes here then based on what we.
Just at the very last paragraph, at the very end of the proposed approval resolution. At number, you can just add right at number 12. You can just say, the applicant can come back before the board to reconsider the route of the water main without filing a formal land development resolution on further information from the consultants, the relevant consultants.
Okay, say that one more time. Applicant can come back before the board to reconsider the route of the water main.
Upon further advice and information from the relevant consultants.
So Rich, if I can clarify that, that means that we'll get our conditional approval, and then we can talk about it, hash it out, come up with agreement, and everything's fine, we won't have to come back and forth.
And now, if it's staying the way it is, you don't have to come back before the board. If after everybody talks to everybody, if somebody's not like, you have to come back and just say, okay, all the consultants agreed, this is fine route. Come back before the board. But you don't have to file a new land development application. You just can come back and say, we talked to Carl, we talked to Aqua, we talked to Dave Porter, everybody ran the numbers. We're all okay with Mr. Nolan's preferred route. Just come back at that time for that one issue.
Okay. Good.
That's, makes sense.
So we'll move down to, I guess that would be section 17.1. Consider approving resolution 2022-26, the Stony Knoll preliminary and final subdivision plan and land development approval. Supervisor Chandler.
Right. Can I get a motion to approve resolution number 2022-26 preliminary subdivision? There's an extra N in preliminary, but preliminary subdivision and land development approval for Stony Knoll, Nolan south of Wayland Road, based on with the following conditions. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Newtown Township hereby resolves and conditionally approves the preliminary / final plan. Number 2, the following waivers which must be set forth on the preliminary plan. A, partial waiver from chapter 148-34A and 148-34F regarding the requirement for sidewalks and curbs internal to the community to allow for increased stormwater management. Curbs and sidewalks will be required along Wayland Road. In addition, there must be 4-foot wide sidewalks on one side of each of the new roads. B, a waiver from section 148-27C5 regarding maximum length of cul-de-sac streets of 700 feet to allow the proposed road to be 1,779.08 feet with the following conditions regarding road width. a waiver from section 148-43.B4 to allow storm drain pipe to be high-density polyethylene rather than reinforced concrete, subject to compliance with alternate engineer review letter. D, a waiver from section 148-12 to allow for combined submission of preliminary/final plans. E, a waiver of section 148-35A regarding curbing to allow for swales in connection with the stormwater management plan. 3, such approval is subject to the terms and conditions of the aforementioned Township alternate engineer review letter dated May 25th, 2022, developer response letter, and the fire marshal review letter of April 28th, 2022, with the exception of the road parking restriction, copies of which are attached here too and made part of. Number 4, such approval is also subject to the following terms and conditions. A, the developer shall establish a homeowners association for the development and provide the final declaration governing the HOA and budget to the township solicitor for review and approval prior to recording. Approval will not be unreasonably withheld. B, the declaration governing the HOA shall provide for the perpetual maintenance of the open space, trails, fences, roadways, rights of way, retaining walls, streetlights, curbs, stormwater management facilities, and sanitary sewer mains, unless otherwise offered for dedication and accepted by the municipal authority. All roadways in the development shall be undedicated, and the developer my understanding is that that's not what the board was approving.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that you all are asking us to dedicate it, but I think it's our authority to say whether we're going to dedicate it or not. Yeah, and I don't think the board wants to accept dedication. I think that's what the motion is.
By continuing here. All roadways in the development shall be undedicated, and the developer, including any subsequently formed homeowners association, shall be responsible for providing services in the nature of, but not limited to, snow and ice removal, street and driveway maintenance, trail and sidewalk maintenance, recycling, street lighting, stormwater management maintenance, post-construction stormwater management, BMPs maintenance, and trash removal. It being understood that Newtown Township will not be providing municipal services, in the nature of these services be provided by the developer in any subsequently formed HOA. D, the paved portion of the road will be 32 feet wide. Revised stormwater management calculations accounting for the additional impervious cover from widening the road shall be provided to the alternate township engineer for review prior to the board signing the plans for recording. E, the developer will execute open space restriction and maintenance agreements, which will be recorded with the recorder of deeds. F, the HOA shall secure the services of a licensed professional engineer to conduct annual inspections of all stormwater management facilities and stormwater BMPs, including but not limited to stormwater basins, stormwater conveyance swales, and all other stormwater BMPs, including plantings and landscaping. An annual written report shall be submitted to the township in digital and hard copy. A note to this effect shall be included on the record plan and be provided for in the PCSM-O&M agreement and the declaration governing the HOA. G, a blanket easement shall be granted to the township or its designees in a form satisfactory to the township solicitor for all private properties and common areas for inspection, preservation, and maintenance of all stormwater conveyance, infiltration, detention areas, and other BMPs, as well as street trees. H, any and all plantings, including street/shade trees to be utilized for stormwater BMP credits, shall be clearly noted on any plot plan that includes a residential dwelling unit. The note stating that the tree must be preserved and maintained in perpetuity. In the event that a street tree or other vegetative BMP is felled or removed, whether or not on private property, the HOA and township shall have the enforcement authority to ensure that the vegetative BMP is replaced in a timely fashion. I, the developer, shall pay a fee of $300 in lieu of each of the 15 replacement trees which it cannot plant as referenced in the township arborist letter of May 19th, 2022. J, all stormwater swales and BMPs and shade trees shall be clearly marked on all plot plans, notes detailing the nature and requirements of the feature. These swales and BMPs shall be disclosed to the home buyer at the time of agreement of sale. K, developer shall be responsible for payment of all fees in accordance with township code, including stormwater management fees, inspection fees, and fees in lieu of recreational lands. Recreational fee is $48,000 for the 13 dwelling units. L, developer shall secure all necessary easements for the connection of this development's sanitary sewer system to the public sanitary sewer system prior to recording the recording of the preliminary plan. M, developer shall obtain approval of the soil erosion and sediment control plan from the Conservation District with copies to the township engineer prior to recording of the plans. N, developer shall install an earth berm between lots 8, 9, and 10 and the adjacent properties along Hunt Valley Circle to direct water flow into an inlet or inlets on lot 9 through to basin 2. This berm shall be depicted on the preliminary plan prior to recording and be of sufficient dimensions such that the township engineer is satisfied it is suitable for its intended purpose. O, developer shall obtain NPDES permit for disturbance greater than 1 acre and submit a copy of the permit to the township and the township engineer prior to recording the plans. P, there will be sidewalks consistent with paragraph 2A above, and Q, developer shall add a raised inlet grate to the proposed inlet on lot 9 to reduce clogging. 5, developer will coordinate with the township to determine which plans are to be recorded and make any necessary modifications to the plans to implement the recording of the preliminary plan in accordance with this resolution. 6, developer shall obtain approval of the proposed sanitary sewer services to the development from all necessary parties, including but not limited to the township municipal authority, and a sewage facilities planning module approved by PADEP, and provide proof thereof to the satisfaction of the alternate township engineer and township sewage enforcement officer prior to recording the plans. Developer shall also enter into an agreement with the township/township municipal authority for the proposed sanitary sewer system upon approval of the system by the required government agencies. 7, developer shall construct the development in strict accordance with the preliminary plan, except as otherwise modified herein, the terms and conditions of this resolution and any agreements required by this resolution. 8, the developer shall enter into developers, financial security, and stormwater operations and maintenance agreements with the township to be prepared by the township solicitor. The township manager is authorized to execute the agreements when approved by the township solicitor and engineer. 9, payment of all outstanding fees, deposits, and costs owed to the township by the developer shall be made prior to recording of the preliminary plan. 10, developer shall provide to the alternate township engineer and township solicitor all legal descriptions for all easements prior to recording of the preliminary plan. 11, developer shall comply in all respects with all applicable township codes, ordinances, and regulations, as well as any applicable county, state, or federal regulations, and developer must obtain all applicable township, state, county, and federal permits, approvals, and/or waivers. And 12, applicant come back before the board to reconsider the route of the water main upon further advice and information from the relevant consultants.
Motion was made by Supervisor Chandler, seconded by Supervisor Robert Sycamp. Is there any other board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Appreciate it. There you go. Thank you. We'll now move down to board comment. Is there any board comment? Seeing none, we'll move down to public comment. Is there any public comment? Items for the next agenda. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.